This is real life, and we all have our moments. It's hard. It's hard to be a human on this planet right now, and there are many people who are kind of burying their head in the sand and just going for the zombie thing because it's easier. And one thing that I will say that is my big message right now is the majority of the people on the planet want to live in a generous way. If you can become in any way an inspiration to another human being, that's a victory.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Reality Roofing. I have a dear friend and colleague with me today, Chidi Cohen, author of the new book, Nuture, which is just an incredible, well, first of all, I just love the name and just the whole vibe of it. We, of course, both forgot the book today, or both of us. Well, I thought about it. Erica didn't. She's kind of like, whatever. But it's a beautiful book. And so I want to talk a lot about that. And then also you just opened an incredible, I feel like very progressive kind of space in Los Angeles called LOOM, and you can speak to more of the exactly what it is, but in my kind of feeling, it's a space for all things creative, with that being birth, but also everything kind of around birth and life and loss of life and all of these things, and kind of a women's and family center, and that just happened also in the past couple of months. So it's been a busy time, and I'm really, really happy that you're here with us. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I always love seeing you. So it's always like a nice kind of cut to the quick ground down. So yeah. And I think for both of us, the past 12 months have been very, very full.
Yes. It's been a full time.
Yeah. The book and Loom opening both, well, the book coming out in October and then Loom opening in October was definitely not planned.
Yeah. Yep.
But
it's kind of like a pregnancy. Like some pregnancies. Yeah.
But has been one of the greatest educational moments of my life in terms of understanding my own limits, understanding my own flexibility, and learning to set internal boundaries that not even anyone else is privy to, just knowing that, okay, here's a threshold, and trying to continue to meet that is the current journey that I'm on.
It's really, I think anyone who has created anything, a birth of a book, a birth of a actual physical place, I mean, both of those things separately is like it's such an expansion, but both at the same time, what a beautiful, the universe just had has so much in store for you. So how give me a little rundown of how that's all shaking out, because it's been about 3 months.
Yeah, it's been about 3 months since we opened. So for those who may not know, Loom provides education, services, and community to all people around pregnancy, parenting, and reproductive empowerment. So we're really focused on meeting people exactly where they're at and giving them options to navigate things like their menstrual cycle, sex positivity for those that don't have children yet, navigating the options around pregnancy, whether you're working with a doctor or a midwife, you're at home, you're planning a cesarean birth, just creating more equity around the options so that it feels less polarizing.
Yeah.
I think a big reason why we want to do that is we'd like to be more commingled with the medical community, because when we think about, okay, how do we really move the needle? How do we, improve health outcomes for people and really create civic social change? It's not about being us or them. It's about, okay, what is the cultural norm? What is the care norm? And how can we kind of lean into that and, get comfortable, and through that comfortability, expose that kind of more calcified environment to, okay, these are some other options that are really working for people. And like, how can we kind of, fuse the two together? And then, we're also really focused on creating equity around birth and non-birth outcomes. So we have a loss pathway at Loom that really looks at supporting people, whether they've had a miscarriage or an abortion or, experienced a stillbirth. Again, it's like that is another narrative that typically is deep in the chthonic. It's not really being discussed.
Yeah.
However, I do feel like 2017 has been a year where the things we have not been discussing are now front and center at the dinner table.
Yes.
So
especially women's health issues, women's issues in general, but women's
100%.
health.
Yes.
The kind of the very medieval arena of women's health, in my opinion, even in 2017, there's, so many just like strange medieval kind of hangover practices and shames and Victorian kind of, mores and that are still there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a very big year for this.
Huge year. And I mean, when we think about that, we, at Loom, we also, focus on parenting as well. But I think that parenting paradigm is deeply shifting.
Yes.
People are creating their own narratives around family. Relationship constellations are looking very different. Fathers are looking to be more involved. Mothers are sometimes more in the workplace. Blended families that are not heteronormative. Trans families having babies. So we're really trying to look at the entire experience and create more inclusivity around that. And it's interesting to hear you point out medieval mores that are still existing now. I think it's also really interesting just to think about the forcefulness of the patriarchy and how deeply embedded it is in all of our collective psyche, and how, a lot of that narrative is what's been pushing the pregnancy, parenting, and reproductive kind of industry. It's like that female voice, unaugmented by patriarchy, has not really had a lot of space.
Yeah.
Because even the female voices that are there, that narrative of patriarchy has still kind of made its way through. And so I think what's interesting now, because of everything that's happened, from the Me Too component to women speaking more openly about sex, about periods, about their body, it's like that patriarchal energy is starting to dwindle. And we're actually being able to have real, uncomfortable, but transformative conversations about the things that are actually important,
Yeah, and I have to say, you spend your everyday in this arena, and I certainly do not. But I will say, just from my experience in the health and wellness scene, the institution of motherhood and the institution of even this kind of the holistic institution of what it looks like to be, a healthier, holistic mother or pregnant mother or parent, or just all the whole institution around that, and the shaming and the polarization of that. I just feel like it's so important what you guys are doing at Loom, because even forget about the allopathic world. I'm talking specifically about, you don't breastfeed, or you had a cesarean, or you're not attachment parenting, or just the kind of Waldorf shaming that happens here on the west side of Los Angeles. It's so heavy. And I think you see it. It's obviously kind of it's more apparent, I guess, in some ways in the allopathic world. But so I really appreciate that you guys are creating such a kind of empowered space for everyone.
Totally. I mean, I appreciate you saying that, and it's so interesting thinking about conflating the allopathic world and then just kind of society at large. And I think that kind of continuing, or maybe the conduit between those two being shame. I think shame is such an interesting emotion, and I think it's something that a lot of people and parents aren't really aware that it's driving so many of the decisions that they're making.
Yes.
And that's why I think trying to have more shame-free conversations is really the strongest, or kind of the most powerful tool we have right now. Because even when we think about motherhood or pregnancy, for example, as a doula, I'm not attached to how you want to navigate this experience. If you're coming to me and, you're wanting to work with me and you're saying, hey, I really want to have a cesarean birth, that's just what I'm wanting, I'm going to show you the options. I'm going to tell you, the pros and cons, but I'm going to support you in your decision, because that's what you need. What you need is that unbroken, uncomplicated support. And I think and I've had clients be able to come to me and just say that off the bat, because they know that I'm not holding anything around the decisions that they're making. And I think when people feel like they're not being shamed, they can just show up. And birth really in so many ways is just one moment. There's this entire lifetime of work that they're getting ready to do. And so if we're getting them, focused in on just these, at the most, maybe a 72-hour experience,
right,
it's really kind of not setting them up for kind of long-term success to be that myopic. We have to kind of give them a more expansive way of looking at it, saying you're going to do the best you can with whatever decisions you make now, but let's look at, okay, how can we meet you on the other side?
It's really beautiful. And we were just talking about this. It's everything, obviously, we create as humans, I think as women, it's even more, at least in the Yogi Bhajan teachings as women, it's 16 times more kind of energetically held or like what I would call aurically held for women when we create something, whether it's a child or a business, or it's held in this kind of energetic space. And I just want to point this out to you because I think it's, especially in those first months of creating something, you're holding this particular thing in your aura or in your energy field at a very early age, which I also feel like is, one of the powers of being a millennial is this, that there's an expansiveness around the kind of what things look like and a reprogramming and a reorganizing of what things look like in terms of all aspects of society. That's what your generation is really, at the forefront of doing.
For sure.
But you're holding that in the aura. And so this space is becoming such a unique kind of space of that conversation. And really, I don't know where else this is happening. I mean, there's a couple of places that I've heard of, but it's really unusual. And so I just want to congratulate you because I know it's really hard in the first months of any creation to remember why you did it.
Yeah, exactly.
And even though I know you're touching so many lives, I think it's just just to give you the reflection of that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It is kind of hard to sit and reflect on it when you're so in it.
It's so hard.
And it's also hard because in some ways, Loom is very different to anything that's been there before. One of the things we laugh about, my co-founder and I, Quinn Lumberg, we always laugh because there's not a good comp for Loom. We're not like, it's like this.
Yes. Yeah.
We're kind of like, it's like this, it's like that. It's also kind of like this. And then here it is,
Yeah.
It's basically, slashy, which is funny because I think that's another term that's typically conflated with millennials being like, I'm this, I'm a little bit of that, I'm like a chef, I'm a this, so it's like our Loom has that energetic around it, but I think it's for the positive because, the experience of, from getting your period and, becoming a sexual being and having a baby and becoming a parent and eventually going through menopause, which is something we're interested in kind of getting back to at some point.
Yes.
It is a through line, but because again, our society hasn't wanted to connect those things, the fact that we're doing that is dysregulating for people. And so we're just trying to kind of take it day by day, week by week, whereas when people get closer and they come in and they take a class or they have an experience, it all really starts to gel for them. And so we're happy to kind of take that time and go through that process.
Do you feel there's a kind of a big incline around educating? Or is that where you feel most of your time is being spent in terms of on the ground of like this part of the opening? Or do you feel it's more that like what are you getting through the door? Like what's the most common thing that's kind of coming through the door in terms of people? Are they looking for something in general, or is it really like a varied experience?
Well, that's a really interesting question because at Loom we have 7 different pathways, but for the sake of this point of the conversation, we have a considering pathway that focuses on reproductive empowerment, and then our expecting pathway that's for expecting people, and then our parenting pathway for new parents. When we started the business, we were pretty sure that our expecting and parenting pathways were going to be gangbusters. Like that's the focus.
Right.
I'm, a doula. Like, I came in kind of with that head on. But the considering pathway is something that we decided to bring to the table maybe like 4 months before we opened. primarily because I said to myself, this is my pathway.
Right,
I don't have children.
Right.
I am very much in touch with my cycle. It took me a long time to kind of fine tune it to where it is now. I'm super interested in sex and having positive conversations about it. So, we developed, Roadmap, which is our class that's about period, sex, and the body, and then our fertility coaching program. And then we're actually starting period coaching at the top of the year. And the reason we're starting period coaching is because our considering pathway has been one of our highest performers.
Interesting.
Because I think there's this awakening in women who are now wanting to either come off birth control and not to have children, or just wanting to come off it, or wanting to figure out, like, what is this? What's happening in my body? What are my phases? What is my cycle? Like, what is this? And so those women have been coming in, and those women have been feeling really empowered and educated. And then, the bifurcation being, there's a fertility coaching component. And what I was noticing is that some women were transferring over to that program because they're thinking of conceiving or in the process of, but then other women were just like, I don't want to have kids anytime soon. I just want to really fine tune my cycle more. And that's actually what kind of predicated the desire to start this period coaching program, because people want that. And so we're having to be very nimble in the first few months of people being like, actually, this is what I want. And being able to say, okay, cool, let's like show up and do that. So a lot of my time right now is spent, doing, class education and then one-on-one coaching with clients, whether it's fertility, pregnancy, or based at this point, is where I'm putting a lot of my energy. And then obviously kind of talking to people about LOOM, sharing about it, which, as you know, that discussion component can take up a lot of time.
It can take up so much time.
So much?
Yeah. To the point where, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Oh, big time introvert.
That's what I thought.
Truthfully, so.
So I hear you, girl. People don't believe
I'm an introvert.
Yeah,
no, really.
Like, give me silence and no one to be found for 500 miles, and
I'm fine.
All will be fine.
Yeah,
I will be in total bliss.
I'll be great. 3 days at home, no one came. Great, no problem. Yeah.
So that's that. I understand that. I think people are. When you're at the head or the helm of something, and you are speaking a lot and kind of in the position that I think we both are in different ways, it's sometimes people don't believe you that you're an introvert, and it's such a stretch to spend this much time kind of just even talking to people.
Yeah. But as you know, as introverts, as long as we have the downtime, and there's a very aggressive kind of self-care ritual, whether it's like kind of, down and dirty, or it's a little bit more...
Give me your down and dirty self-care ritual. We all want to know.
What's the down and dirty? And for me, the down and dirty is I live like 5 minutes from Olympic Spa in LA. So I will like sometimes I'm like, do I want to shower at home or do I want to shower at the spa? And so then I'll be like, okay, I'm just going to go over there. So that's like my down and dirty, like get it in. You know,
just whatever. Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah. And then I like a good, like I have this like magnesium trifecta I'll do at home. So I'll do like 300 milligrams of magnesium glycinate down 30 minutes before I go to bed. And then I will draw a bath and I'll do like 2 like cups of magnesium crystals like in the bath.
Yes.
And then I will get out and I will do magnesium oil all over my body.
Wow,
and
that's
then,
cool.
Yeah, and then I will go to sleep.
I'm talking. That's like, whoa.
Yeah, it's like dead sleep. It's like, it just like takes you.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm very
I haven't heard that one. Thank you for sharing You're that. Welcome. That's so good.
That's my down and dirty.
Like, that is down and dirty.
I'm like, it's always, I'm like, take it in. I'm like, put me in it. I'm like, rub it all over me. Good night. Yeah. Yeah. I did it last night actually because I was a little anxious. Like I just had that kind of like fettered energy before I went to bed. And because I have a thing, like before I go to sleep, I've had this since I've been little, I will panic about falling asleep before I fall asleep. Okay. And I'm kind of like, oh, will I go to bed? Will I go to bed? Will I go to bed? And then I'm out.
You go to bed.
Then I go to bed. But last night, it just like, I did my, my magnesium overload. Yeah. And I was just like, good night. Like it just, anyway. Yeah. Long story short.
That's a good one. Yeah. That's a good one. How about if you have plenty of time, what's the rituals? Anything that's fun? Because that one's really good. Now I want to know more.
Well, I feel like I really love life, and not in a kind of like euphemistic sense, or I really do. Like, I love to cook. I went to culinary school before I went to college, and so if I do have a day, I love going to the grocery store. And also my self-care is very in some sense is very urban. So there's two sides of it. There's the urban side. So the grocery store is a very happy place for me.
Yes, me too. I love going to the grocery store.
If I have the time, I'm in the aisle and I'm just like very quietly selecting what I need. I'm listening to my music. Usually music's a really big thing for me. I've sung most of my life. And so I'll have my music on. I'm in the grocery store, and then I'll go home. I'll make a meal slowly, have some tea while I'm doing it. And then maybe, I love to make like a large meal. That's a really great thing for me to do,
Yeah.
And then just like a really good conversation is really nice. Like a lazy one. Like there's no real entry or exit point.
Yeah.
Person's in the living room. They're coming in the kitchen.
Yeah.
It's like even talking about it is actually regulating to my system. Just feeling the energy of like, okay, when I do that, that feels really good. Those are things I like to do. Make food, shop for food. And then I love to clean my house, not in an OCD way.
Right.
Not like, I gotta clean to feel okay, even though I am a little OCD anyway. But it's more just like everything has a place, and like rhythmically going through my house and kind of like making everything feel good is really nice.
We call it puttering.
Yes, puttering around.
Because like I don't actually. I mean, I my Virgos out there know what I'm talking about.
Ooh,
I'm not
Virgo
actually.
rising. Hey, you.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then maybe you know, because you might have this too. Because like I think it's a misnomer that Virgo is organized in a certain way. I'm organized in a uncertain way. You know what I mean? Well, I'm certain about it, but it's not. So I like to put, but I don't. It's a whole different way than like actually. If people have Mars and Virgo, it's a little different. But Virgo rising, Virgo moon, Virgo like sun, which I, So it's the putter. It's like you kind of like one little area, you kind of whatever, and then
get
you
in there,
putter around.
Yeah. I totally understand.
I think that's some of the best self care. I mean that to me like totally. And I went up to my boyfriend was teaching in Hudson Valley, and I went up with him to kind of like take care of him while I was teaching, play wifey. I was having like a little playhouse because I never get to do that. Yes. And I ended up going to like every farmer's market in Hudson Valley, and I was like, by the time he got home, like one day he's like, "What are you doing with all this food?"
It was great.
I'm like, I just had like, it was so relaxing to just like,
so nice.
Like go to the farmer's market and buy. I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. We're gonna have to like, but anyways, it was a luxury.
I think too for someone like you, it's like it is so nice to go to the farmer's market and have no appointments.
Oh my gosh,
that is another form of self-care. Blocked out days, a day when it's like there's not even a call, not even like a 15-minute like, can I get on the phone with you?
No,
zero.
Yeah.
That's another.
It's a major. I appreciate this because I think a lot of people, I always make fun of hashtag self-care Sunday. Like everybody's kind of
me too, though.
These rituals and stuff. Because I do think I feel that there's a lot of cognitive dissonance, which I know that we've talked about a lot between kind of what it looks like on Instagram to be in wellness or to be all of the kind of this was a term Noah Levine used, which I loved, which is supremacy culture, like the supremacy culture of spirituality and the wellness industry is just like next level.
100%.
And so I just love to hear these like very accessible and just simple things that that are just, I mean,
totally.
I was talking about this morning, that you're caring for self in some way if you can actually feel it's a visceral experience of, like you said, like that the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. You can just feel that, and I think that's just good that's accessible for people instead of it being like here's my ritual bath of the all this kind of, like I don't know.
Look,
you even have to clean that out of the bathtub.
Yeah.
That's why I never do that kind of like. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, now I have to get but then I have to clean it up out of my bathtub.
Yeah,
that's
just like
stressful.
So stressful. And here's the thing: it's like it's so funny when I hear you say that. I am not, and I know you're not either, discounting the value of that type of pageantry attached to one's practice
or ritual. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
It's really not a problem. But I think I'm always attuning to the fact that it's 2017. The world is at this frenetic pace.
Yeah.
And so you got to get in. You got to get in and just do what you can, like wherever you are. And so I'm always saying to myself, okay, how much more stripped down can this be?
Yeah.
Like, what's the goal? Is the goal to turn on my parasympathetic nervous system? Okay, what do I need to do that?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And just like keying people into like, use your imagination. I'm the biggest daydreamer, you know, and that might be because I'm ADD, but also it's just like, I will sit and just let my brain kind of just like flow and be okay with that too. And it's just like trying to encourage people to access that on a normal basis when you're in the car and driving, even, you know, obviously pay attention to the road, but let your mind.
Yeah. Don't be texting daydreaming and driving.
No,
we're not encouraging that.
But like, let your mind go a little bit, you know, if you can. And I understand that even saying that is energetically privileged, like let your brain go. But I think it's something that, I don't know. I want healing and wholeness and all of that to feel like that's a step away for me. It's not, you know, it's a step away to get on the journey of it. Not, I have to do all these things to even like touch like an iota of that experience.
Exactly.
It's that I love that you brought that concept of supremacy. It is. It's so easy to be like, that's only for these people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? So
and you know, I mean, daydreaming and doesn't cost anything, and it does like exercise the plasticity of the brain, which is such a treasure. I mean, that's, you know, these are the kinds of things that make us truly rich. So I want to talk about Nuture a little bit.
Yeah.
What in terms of, I mean, it's just such a beautiful book and it feels so good. Like, talk about, you know, like I just, you know, I'm such a visceral person and such a visual person, and it has so many things. It's really like you could unpack that book for a long, long time. And so just for those who are out there, you know, I'd love to just hear about your creative process. I'd love to hear about that.
Sure.
And then, because I think always any woman who has published a book is a woman that is changing the tide, you know, over the course of history. So just in that, but your creative process, and then just anything in the actual content that feels relevant right now to share. Because again, I feel like it's much more than just a book about birth and a book about, you know, parenting or post-birth or pre-birth, you know. I feel like it has so much in there. So
yeah, for sure. I think the creative process, there's a couple different ways of looking at it, but simply put, it's very isolating.
Yes.
Again, I bring up this concept of pageantry around, you know, life experience, but again, with the concept of a book. When someone hears you've written a book or are writing a book, there's so much pomp and circumstance just even with saying that statement. And a lot of people think it's this like glamorous process where you're just like sitting at your computer typing.
Like George Bernard Shaw in like, Barcelona.
Yeah. You like wake up in the morning, you put on like your silk robe and like have a sip of something warm, and then you're like, I must get back. You know, it's just, it's really not like that. It's like
Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah, it's just like, not so much. It's pretty isolating. It's there's a lot of anxiety involved, for sure.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it was, I'm a very vocal, I love talking.
Yeah.
So a big part of my process was actually making voice notes, actually just dictating a lot of chapters.
Yeah.
And then, you know, having some support with kind of having that edited down and then given back to me, and then having myself kind of sit and edit it some more. And then some of it was just straight kind of, you know, getting it onto the page. But if what I would say to anybody that does find that communicating with their voice is the way they kind of are able to write on the page in a way. I feel like some people are kind of kinesthetic like that. There's got to be movement, but as you're like writing, like if you find you talk to yourself a little bit, that process of voice noting and having it transcribed and then editing it again was a nice kind of process for me to be in. Because when I was like, I would have some of my best ideas when I was just kind of riffing. So yeah, it was a long process. It took kind of over a year. And I had to really constrict my life in order to make it happen. It's a long book. It's
no,
done.
it's a legacy book. I mean, it will be for, I feel that it's going to be, just a lot of these kind of legacy women's health books. I feel it belongs on the shelf of that. And I'm not saying it's just for women, but I do think that's kind of
that's the core audience,
yeah.
However, it's been interesting. I've had a lot of partners come up to me, male partners, and say, "Oh, I'm like loving this book. I'm reading it with, I'm reading it with her, or I'm reading it to her." And I think it's because, I'm always, playing with that polarity of that, male animus and that female animus. And I, as a queer person, I think I really, my read of something is always going to be, can everybody read this? And by making it accessible, then you're automatically creating community beyond just the women, with their partners as well. So that's kind of been, it's just been fun kind of getting that feedback.
It's interesting. Like, I think that is, you forget that people are going to read it. Did you have that experience?
Yes.
It's like, you're like, so, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, people read it and it helps their lives or it inspires them or, I mean,
it's bizarre.
It is bizarre.
Yeah, I'm still not, I don't even know if I'll ever be over that. To know that someone's sitting in their bed and like reading my words and feeling positively from doing that, it's kind of magic.
It is magic. I mean, that's the part, just like, I think just to inspire anyone out there, it's worth, it doesn't matter like whether you've thought of the thing over and over again, or if it seems like, elementary because it's been something that you've been with or you've lived with.
Sure.
You never know. My teacher calls it the Hey Margaret moment, where it's like, hey Margaret, did you know that, you just don't know. Like people, and I do feel like, if this planet is going to survive this particular shift that we're in, the sharing of ideas and the kind of commingling of geniuses, and it's more and more important. It's more important than it ever has been.
Yeah,
so
100%. Yeah. And I resonate with that so much, and that's why too, like a lot of the content in Nuture is like, the first part of the book is called Welcoming Change, and it has nothing to do with the anatomy and physiology or your baby is the size of an orange at 7 weeks.
Yeah.
It has everything to do with the emotional component of moving into this stage of your life. I asked the reader to look at their relationships. Are you the first to get pregnant in your cohort or your community? Are you the last? What does work look like if you're freelancing? How do you assess readiness with your partner? How are you mothered? How do you feel about parenting? I mean, so many of us come from really challenging families of origin, and it's really not knocked on when you're when you're going through that door.
Yeah.
And so I'm really trying to create just a little bit of a bigger picture that is less kind of baby-centric, less birth-centric, and just person-centric.
Yeah.
And kind of forcing them, or at least kind of, ushering them or motivating them to have conversations that might be a little bit more uncomfortable with themselves or, kind of with their care provider or with their partner. And there's a whole little piece in there too about feelings versus intellect. I think for people, most of the time, it's so easy to intellectualize how you actually feel.
Right.
I'm constantly suffering from that.
Yeah.
Because it's easier for me to say, that person is going through this experience and that's why they're projecting this at me, as opposed to me just saying, like, I feel really sad.
Right.
This person's making me feel really sad. Because that feels, you feel, for whatever reason, we have this feeling that means weakness if you just admit the feeling.
Yeah.
But for women in pregnancy, actually tapping into your feeling, like, what is the feeling? Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you shameful? Is going to help you make better decisions about your pregnancy.
Yeah.
Because I want to know, like, what's the feeling? And then we can kind of really drill down and be like, okay, what's the birth experience you're trying to actually aim for? So it's a little bit of a different perspective. And I feel there's a couple other really great books coming, like, right behind me, that are having that now deeper emotional conversation as opposed to, this is what happens at 27 weeks.
Right. Yeah.
It's just not that interesting anymore, I think.
I mean, you can Google it.
Yeah.
So if
exactly.
I mean, that's, so if you want to offer something that is originality. It does have to be a different, and I do feel like the shift of the intuitive wisdom is part of the shift of age, and this is what's happening. And the interesting part about that is that it isn't a cognitive experience. So we're having to create a new lexicon, basically. And that I think in many ways one of our connecting points is that we're very aware of what that is, even if we don't know exactly. If the language is still forming, if the formation of the formations are still forming, that's really what the breaking of the ice of a new way to communicate.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think my friend who's doing a kind of a fellowship with Krista Tippett from On Being, at the beginning of this fellowship earlier in the year, one of the things that Krista mentioned to the group of fellows was that, we're in a time where we have to create new realities.
Yeah.
Actively do it. And, I know that's something you've actually always been talking about.
Yeah.
It's just that kind of augmenting that we have to go through. But I think even the first time I met you or I was in your class and I heard you talk about that, it really kind of hit me, But the environment, we were still with Obama. There was still this, there was still a bit of malaise, in terms of, okay, how active, how erect do I need to really be, Right. And to now be here 3 years, almost 4 years later, where it was almost like the sharpening of the tools was in that time, and now we have to get up and be ready and be doing the work, even though we're tired, because it's been like this whole process of kind of, pushing us in these uncomfortable positions. And the hope I'm feeling, or at least what I feel around me right now, is that everyone's got the energy to do it. We just need to really lean into each other to get to that next place. Otherwise, I don't know. I actually don't want to think about the other one. So I just want to stick with the people who are going to come together.
Yeah, you gotta, it's important to amplify, especially as we go into 2018. It's a very amplified time, just in terms of the numerology and the astrology, and so it is to amplify what it is that even if you don't have the exact how or the exact words or the exact knowing to just look towards the great eastern sun is what Chogyam Trungpa calls it, or there's lots of terms for it, but to look towards that is a really deep spiritual discipline, because it's so easy to get seduced into the what was happening. This morning when I left my boyfriend's loft, there was somebody was being arrested or something, and I just found myself slowing down the car and you just can't help but watch the thing happen, which is fine, whatever, we're curious, but there's definitely the spiritual rigor is that you try to, as much as you can during the day, look towards the dawning of the whatever it is, whether it's a new way of being or a new way of thinking, or if you're having a new way of forming a family, or a new way of loving yourself, which is really the
work.
Conscious conception. You want to talk about some conscious conception? That's it right there.
Yeah, that's the constant practice is trying to find that, I think that's something that I do find, every time I'm with you too, it's always, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, there's kind of a direct line of some kind of energy that just kind of shows up, and really it's hard to kind of put into words. Honestly. But the constant practice of loving yourself is it's like birthing yourself again and again and again. Yeah.
Yogi Bhajan calls it self-concept, and I really do feel like that, whether in whatever kind of creative space you find yourself, it's that's the creative. Even if you're creating yourself as a parent, or whatever, in that kind of conversation, but wherever you are, I think I'm watching, because we have a lot of Rama Rama babies happening, and I'm just watching these people, these yogis. I'm not saying they're like, they may not be adopting certain aspects of a yogic lifestyle that are like kind of stereotypical, but what I would call them yogis because they're practicing and they're attempting to be conscious of their breath and whatever. But I'm just watching them kind of totally create a new concept of what it is to be a parent, and it's a total new archetype, and it's very beautiful, just beautiful. People, this is the thing. I was talking to a 15-year-old in class this morning. I went to see Star Wars yesterday.
Cool.
Have you seen it?
Not yet.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm not going to ruin it for you or anyone else out there. But this 15-year-old had seen it, and I was like, what was it about it that got you so much? And he was like, well, basically that being a Jedi, you will always kind of be true and look to the other Jedis to be there to support you. Like he went there on the and I just that I thought it was so sweet because that's why these conversations and community centers, and this is why, even though it's hard, brick and mortar, and this is why it's so important.
Totally.
Because when the Jedis come together, there is literally a parasympathetic nervous system resonance that happens, that we remember that there's a reason why we've incarnated here, and why these new souls are incarnating, and there's a reason, and it's something that is like, it's a cultural it's almost a memory of the future.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not a memory of the past, but a memory of the
like
future.
Where we're going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an Avatar kind of
Yeah,
situation.
I got it. I got it.
You got it?
I got it.
Okay. So I want to just quickly touch on, because we talked about this, and I think it's interesting. So being a woman, being a creative, being a businesswoman.
Yes.
Now in a much different way, and also having a team of women. We were kind of riffing on some of this. What's your experience with this kind of woman-led business model environment? Like what do you like?
Well, I think what's interesting is that we were talking about is that with women, you're dealing with a lot more, on the one hand, depth, earnestness, vulnerability, which makes for really wonderful kind of team cohesion in some sense, in one part, and sensitivity as well. But then at the same time, especially in American culture, and I guess worldwide, women were kept out of the workplace for so long, were financially, disempowered and impoverished for so long, and there's some ancestral trauma around that. So whether someone's aware of it or not, they're carrying that. So when you're talking about things like someone's job description, or you're changing their remit at work, you're saying, actually, I'd like you to do something else instead of this, or we're discussing comp, there's conscious and unconscious activations that are happening in all of those conversations. Yeah. It's like you can be talking, and I can say this here with you really comfortably. It's like you can be talking to someone about compensation and actually be activating them around like their grandmother or their great grandmother. Yeah. It's like it's very deep. And also just the truth of the wage inequalities, and I mean just everything. The whole thing. Yeah. And I think most people aren't aware of the depth of ancestral trauma, how active it is on the day-to-day. And so, from an energetic standpoint, you're as a leader or as a boss, quote unquote, you're wanting, because I'm hyper aware of that, just as like sitting at the top and looking at my team and wanting to support them, I'm trying to repair that, dysfunction of compensation and inequality, because that in itself is reproductive justice. Giving women what they're supposed to be made, what they actually or equity with pay is reproductive justice at its like base. I just got chills. I mean, right? It's like that's beautiful. Beautiful. And then on top of that, it's just wanting to have good group cohesion, and to have a sense of of that family feeling too, but with boundaries. So It's a very fluctuant, intense, rewarding,
intimate,
and also not to mention our cycles play in as well. And so, women, when they're in their kind of follicular and ovulatory phase, we're doing real good. We drift into our luteal phase. It's like everybody turns a little garbagey unless everyone's doing the things they should be doing. So it's just like anticipating that too. And obviously I can't know everyone's cycle. That's like not appropriate in a workplace in some sense, but just anticipating that, hey, X person's a little bit like this today. I wonder where she is in her cycle, and not in a patronizing way or patronizing way. Actually just being like, oh, maybe she is in her luteal phase. So I need to just come back to this conversation in maybe 10 days. Like, I'm not going to do it right now. And because we're small and it's a startup right now, I have the ability, the elasticity to do that. I hope to maintain that. 5 years, 10 years down the line, that's a part of the culture of really noticing where a woman is at physiologically in order to make decisions. So it's like, and the thing is, you say that now, it feels very kind of bizarre and almost like, whoa, why would you do that? Because women have never been included in the architecture of work.
100%. And this is something I'm getting a major idea at first. Let's continue this conversation.
Okay.
Because I think that this is something that's going to develop and become a real part of this new culture of what's happening in this age.
Yeah.
Erica, I'm so happy that you came to I just love being with you. Same. Tell everyone how they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram. It's just my full name, Erica Chidi Cohen. And you can find Loom on Instagram as well. Our handle is This Is Loom. So THISIS Loom, and the website's the same, thisisloom.com. And you can find Nuture, my book, wherever books are sold, actually, because it's pretty much kind of everywhere, actually, at the moment.
It's beautiful.
Thanks.
And everyone, please pick up a copy, support your art and your great, great work in the world. Bless you.
Bless you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.